What's going on, guys? T-Mart here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the max CPs for each species of Pokemon in Pokemon Go. So if you guys don't know, each species, like all Vaporeons and all Raichus and that sort of thing, have a specific CP that's their ceiling. They can get up to that CP and then they can never get beyond it, no matter what Vaporeon you have or what Raichu you have. Some of them will take longer to get there than others because, say you catch a Vaporeon at CP 42 versus a Vaporeon at 900. Obviously, 900 is going to get there quicker, but they're both going to get there with time, and they're never going to get past that point. So I figured it'd be kind of cool to see which Pokemon are the weakest and which are the strongest in Pokemon Go. Now, obviously, there are other things to take into consideration. There are type advantages, so like, a weaker electric Pokemon will usually be a stronger water Pokemon because it has the type advantage, or there are IVs and stuff like that you can take a look at. But in general, CP is a good method to see how strong or how weak a Pokemon is. So let's take a look at the best CP each individual species of Pokemon can have. And in the interest of time, we're not going to be going through all 150. We're just going to be going through the top tier evolution of each of the species. So starting off with the lowest one. So the lowest maximum CP Pokemon in the game is Onyx. You guys can see here, he's an 857, which really is not very good. That's awful. I don't understand why they've hurt Onyx as bad as they have in this game, but when you hatch him, he's usually super, super low. He's really rare. It's hard to get candies to rank him up, and even if you had a ton of candies, he's only going to get powered up to 857, which is abysmal. Now, next up, surprisingly, Ditto. Ditto is our second worst at 920 maximum CP, so we'll have to wait and see how Ditto works. Obviously, we haven't seen him in the game yet. We know he's in the code, but we know nothing about him, so maybe he'll morph into the CP of other Pokemon that you see. I'm not sure. Nobody really knows, but that's his maximum CP as of right now, which is not very good and kind of disappointing because Ditto's awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's introduced to the game. Now, next up beyond Ditto is going to be Dugtrio at an 1169 CP. Next up, we've got the Japan exclusive Farfetch'd with a maximum CP of 1264. So again, that's not very good. Next up, we've got Beedrill at 1440. That's kind of to be expected. I mean, you get Weedles everywhere. They're literally all over the place. So I don't think his highest CP should be, really, really good and kind of destructive. Next up, kind of the same situation here. We've got Eradicate at 1444, another super common Pokemon. You don't want to make those too powerful, otherwise everybody's going to be rocking those. Next up, we've got Butterfree at 1454, kind of the same situation here. Then there's Hitmonchan at 1493. Kind of, I don't know, like I wish he was a little bit stronger because he is pretty rare. I've only caught one of him before, but at the same time, he was never really all that exceptional in the actual Pokemon games, so I kind of understand where that's coming from. Next up, we've got Mr. Mime at 1494. This is the European exclusive, so a lot of us don't have him yet. Let me know if you guys have caught him. If you're over in Europe, leave it down in the comments. Next up, we've got the kind of alter ego to Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan at 1517, so those two are sticking pretty close together. Next up, we've got Lickitung at 1627. I always kind of liked Lickitung, not as like a battler, but I think he's a cool Pokemon, and I haven't found one. I haven't even seen one in the wild yet in Pokemon Go, which makes it kind of sad. Next up, we've got the Evolve of Meowth in Persian at 1632. Then we've got Electrode at 1646, Marowak at 1657, Porygon at 1692. So I've hatched a couple of these bad boys out of the eggs. I think they're an absolutely beautiful Pokemon. They're super, super rare and really hard to get, and honestly not all that powerful, which is kind of sad, but they're still really cool. It's a collector's item, I guess you could say. Anyway, moving on, beyond Porygon is going to be Seadra at a 1713 maximum CP. Then we've got Jinx. This is Jinx at 1717 CP. Next up, we've got Tangela at 1740 CP. I don't really see too many of this guy, but he was never really that useful in my opinion anyway. Next up, we've got Pharaoh at 1746, one of the Pokemon I despise the most, especially in Spearow, the one before him. Next up, we got 1747 with Parris X. Now, Parris X is actually pretty good depending on what sort of attacks you get. You can get some decent attacks in Pokemon Go, so that's obviously, it doesn't have the highest CP in the world, but it's got good attacks that can kind of make up for it. So that's what I'm saying. CP isn't the 100%, end-all, be-all way to judge a Pokemon, but Parris X is kind of in the middle to lower range there. Next up, we've got Arbok at 1767, Sandslash at 1810, Alakazam is limited to a maximum CP of 1814, which makes me really, really sad. I think he should be one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game, and he's just kind of average, which makes me really sad. And he used to have a pretty good charge attack, and I think it was Psychic. I'm not sure which one it was, but he had a really, really good charge up attack that they nerfed heavily recently. So he doesn't have the highest CP in the world. He doesn't have the highest health in the world. He used to be a really, really strong Pokemon, so essentially you'd call him a glass cannon, but then they took that away from him and really rendered him pretty useless. So that makes me sad. I'm hoping they're going to fix him eventually. Next up, we've got Kingler at 1823, Dodrio at 1836, Tauros at 1845. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. We're going to catch a Tauros in an upcoming Pokemon hunting episode in Michigan. I was so hyped. It's the North American exclusive Pokemon. Super hard to find. We actually found him. It's really fun. You guys are going to enjoy it. Next up, we've got Primeape at 1864, Magneton at 1880, Venomoth at 1890. Hold up. I'm going to have to get a guess for this.
You are the master.
Thanks, Chelsea. All right, anyway, moving on. Next up, we got Golbat at 1921. You guys might want to start catching those Zubats because Golbat gets up there. He's almost into the 2K max CPs, which there aren't a lot of Pokemon that make it up there, which is kind of exciting, I guess. Moving on, our first 2K plus max CP is going to be Raichu at 2028, which is pretty exciting. Then we've got Kangaskhan, the Australian exclusive Pokemon, at 2043, Seaking at 2044, Cloyster at 2053, Scyther at 2074, Gengar at 2078, and Pidgeot at 2091. Look at that. Those are all super, super close to each other in the 2000 range. I was kind of excited to see Pidgeot that high. So, all the Pidgeys that you catch, all the, Pidgey candies you've been saving up, that's going to be really, really useful to get yourself a nice 2091 Pidgeot. Anyway, moving on into the 2100s, we've got Electabuzz at 2119, Pinsir at 2121, Kabutops at 2130, Jolteon at 2140. So Jolteon is the weakest of the evolutions in terms of CP. I wonder what the strongest is. I've got a feeling you guys could guess. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we've got Dugong at 2145. I think this is an absolutely beautiful Pokemon. We've got Aerodactyl at 2165. Hype! I just hatched one of these things in that 10K egg opening. Next up, we've got Wigglytuff 2177, Starmie at 2182, Hypno at 2184, Ninetales has a max CP of 2188. Rapidash just barely beats that out at 2199, so I guess Rapidash is better than Ninetales. Next up, we've got Tentacruel at 2220. He's, I think Tentacruel's really, really good. He's got a lot of HP and some pretty good attacks, so I'm super fond of him. Next up, we've got Omastar at 2234. Rhydon has a maximum CP of 2243. Weezing has a max CP of 2250, which kind of surprised me. I don't know. I don't have a Weezing yet. I didn't really think he was going to be some sort of power Pokemon, but he's definitely in like the top 25%, which is nuts. Next up, we got Magmar at 2265, one of my personal favorite Pokemon back in the day. I don't know. I always liked him as a kid. I still don't have him yet in Pokemon Go. I'm super sad about it. I'm looking for him. Next up, we've got Golem at 2303, so he's the first one to break into the 2300s. Golduck at 2386, so save up those Psyducks because he's almost in the 2400s. And then boom, right here, one of my favorite Pokemon in Pokemon Go, Clefable. I never really cared too much about Clefairy and Clefable. They weren't my favorite Pokemon in the world, but in Pokemon Go, Clefable is a tank. It's definitely one of the best Pokemon when it comes to HP and to damage that can be taken. I mean, sometimes it's got higher HPs than Snorlax. It's insane. Even super low CP Clefables have super, super high HPs. They're tanky. They're really good for defending gyms, and, definitely keep your eye out for those. Now, next up, moving on, we've got Nidoking at 2475, and then, of course, any good King puts his queen before him, so we've got Nidoqueen at 2485, just barely beating him out. Next up, we've got Vileplume at 2492, so make sure you guys are saving up those Odyshes. Poliwrath is a 2505, the first Pokemon to grab the 2500 mark, which is insane. That's really getting up there. Next up, we've got Victreebel at 2531. Victreebel is a monster in this game. If you get the right moveset, I mean, there aren't too many good grass Pokemon in this game that can take on all the good water Pokemon like, Vaporeon and Lapras and stuff like that, but Victreebel can get the job done, so make sure you guys look out for those Bellsprouts. They also have super, super high multipliers from Bellsprout to Weeping Bell to Victreebel. So even like a solid 600 or 700 Bellsprout can turn into something huge. So make sure you guys are watching out for those. Now, next up, we are going to move into some of the starter Pokemon. We've got Blastoise with a maximum CP of 2542. I'm glad the starters are way up here in the list. Obviously, the starters are the iconic Pokemon that everybody's going to know and love. So it's good to see him up here. So Blastoise is the weakest of the three. Next up, we've got Venusaur at 2580. And then next up, we actually don't have Charizard. Charizard's a little bit higher, so we'll have to wait for that. Our next one's going to be Machamp at 2594 maximum CP. Then we've got Slowbro at 2597. And then finally, we've got Charizard at 2602. So Charizard is relatively better than Venusaur and Blastoise. You guys definitely want to keep that in mind when you're saving up those candies. Now, next up, we've got Muck with a max CP of 2603, which is really, really good. I mean, Muck is a beast in this game. Unfortunately, I don't have him yet. I just hatched a Grimer recently, and I'm looking forward to getting enough candies to evolve him up. Next up, we've got our second evolution in Flareon with a 2643 max CP, so that beats out Jolteon by quite a bit, but there's still one left that's a little bit higher up the list. I'm sure you guys kind of expected that. Right after Flareon, we have Gyarados with a 2689 max CP. Obviously, Gyarados is an insane Pokemon. I mean, a flying water dragon, who couldn't ask for more? And then right after Gyarados, we've got Vaporeon with a 2816 max CP. So obviously, everybody saw that coming. Vaporeon is definitely the strongest of the three evolutions. Now, moving on to one of my personal favorites in Pokemon Go, Executor. I use him all the time. He absolutely wrecks people, especially with that Solar Beam. He's got a max CP of 2955, almost 3000 max CP. That's insane. That's like crazy to think about. After him, a legendary bird, all right? So who's it going to be? What do you guys think? Which of the teams has the weakest bird in terms of CP? Unfortunately, it's Team Mystic. So I'm sorry for those of you guys that rock the blue. I know Mystic is definitely the most popular team out there. You actually have the weakest bird Pokemon, legendary bird Pokemon in Articuno at a 2978 CP for your max. Next up, we've got Lapras at 2980 for a max CP. Then there's Arcanine for a 2984. I'm about to evolve an Arcanine very, very soon. I can't wait to do that. That should be maybe tomorrow's video. We'll have to wait and see, but that should be kind of cool. Then we've got Snorlax at 3,113 max CP, which is nuts. You guys know how good Snorlax is. After Snorlax, we have our second legendary bird. Who comes in second place when it comes to the best legendary bird in terms of CP? It's Team Instinct. All right, so Zapdos comes in at 3114. And then, of course, last but definitely not least, when it comes to the bird Pokemon, Valor takes it home, as always. I mean, we take all the chimps. We take the Pokemon, too. We've got Moltres here at 3240 for a max CP, which is nuts. And that is, he's actually in fourth place overall. So now we're into the top three strongest Pokemon in Pokemon Go when it comes to max CP. So next up at number 3, taking the bronze, we've got Mew. Now, granted, Mew is not in the game yet. We do know he's in the game code. He's in the files. He has a max CP of 3,299, which is just brutally hard to think about. Like, think about seeing a 3,299 CP Pokemon. That's nuts. After him comes Dragonite at CP 3,500. I actually have seen a couple of super high, like almost 3K plus Dragonite. So 3,500 is the max you're going to see there. And then last but not least, of course, the king, the strongest, the one that's just going to mess everybody up. We've got Mewtwo here. And you guys are going to blow... This is going to blow your mind right here. So Dragonite was 3,500, and most of the differences that we talked about this entire video, a max will jump like 200. Well, Mewtwo actually has a max CP of 4145. So Mewtwo is over 600 CP better than the second best Pokemon in the game. That's how good Mewtwo is when it comes to its max CP, which is absolutely nuts. So anyway, there you guys have it. Those are the strongest Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And thank you guys so much for watching. Got a bunch of great Pokemon Go videos coming soon. And make sure you guys look back tomorrow for what should be an evolving video. It should be a lot of fun. I'll catch you guys there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.